processes to govern corruption risk, these are not enforced. And we have seen that specifically in Africa, if you look at the results, they look at about 180 countries across the world, and then they will then give each country a ranking in terms of how corrupt you are, or how you improve on year on year. So I'll start with my country, South Africa. In 2018, it was sitting at 43. Now it's sitting at 44 in the index. So it is ranked. So out of the 180 countries, it came at number 70. Now, when you look at the other sub-Saharan countries, Somalia, for example, came right at the bottom. It was number 180 of 180 countries. So the most corrupt of all the countries that were surveyed. South Sudan was one of those countries. So that goes to show you that, and a few more of these countries in the African continent. So it goes to show you that there's a lot of corrupt activities happening at high level, happening in the public sector. It doesn't necessarily mean that in the private sector this is not happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that individuals or employees working for those companies or citizens in these states are clean. And also, it doesn't mean that in other parts of the world, corruption is not happening. Now, the Global Business Ethics survey also was run last year. This is done by the Ethics and Compliance Initiative. They ran a survey as well on global business ethics across the world. And the results indicated that leadership, if it's not strong, it influences the low standard of ethical culture in organization or in the states. So if you have strong leadership that is ethical, it is reflected in the organization that you lead. It is reflected in the culture of that organization. And employees and people or citizens, they tend to emulate what their leaders do. And that is why I want to talk about leadership and ethics and say, what is it that leaders can do to be able to drive ethical standards in the different countries that we find ourselves in, especially in Africa, in the different businesses that we find ourselves in. And then also, as I mentioned before, that this is not only in Africa. We have seen in the past 4 years, the big 4 consulting firms, there was a lot of corruption there. It has broken those businesses to a point where trust is no longer there. Right? Because they lost a lot of clients, people didn't want to work for those companies, even though they're building the trust back now. The fact of the matter is it was immensely damaged. So trust is very important as far as this ethical behavior is concerned. And if you think about it, if you don't trust somebody, you do not want to have the relationship with them, you do not want to deal with them. So it is something that is the lifeblood of any organization, of any country. So if you are a leader and you cannot be trusted, it is a big problem. And it takes years to build, but you can just destroy it in a minute. So if you do not have, or stakeholders are not confident with the level of disclosures that you do, like what has happened with Deloitte, KPMG, and all of those organizations, the finances will go out. It will cost the company. It will have a negative financial impact. And stakeholders will not trust you, of course. And by stakeholders, I'm not only talking about your shareholders, I'm talking about the communities that you operate in. I'm talking about the people that would want to come and work for you, the suppliers that you're dealing with. So you basically just lose the business. Sustainability that we're talking about, the sustainability that we want to see in Africa going forward, is also threatened. Now, when we think about ethics and we're thinking about the era that we are now in, Industry 4.0, where there's technological change that is happening at a rapid speed, and you're thinking, if ethics are questioned, how much bigger is this issue going to be? The scale at which this evolution is happening is quite big, and it is complex. There's increase in connectivity, and then you find that data is being processed at a rapid speed. What that means is that if leaders are not in touch with what's happening in their organization, or leaders do not demonstrate that culture of accountability, it might be a bigger problem. So the current issue or current risks that they have, they will manifest in different ways if they do not watch it. And if they are not in touch with what is happening, also we will see that, as people have been saying, that machines are going to come and take people's jobs or replace people, what happens is that now technology drives the change. It's no longer leaders that drive the change. Whereas when we are in touch with what is happening as leaders, we are able to drive the change and say, this is what our processes are, this is what our policies are, and therefore this is what we want technology to do for us, to be able to give us the better future that we want. And we'll be able to prepare for the impact that's coming with these technologies. Now, if I take what has happened now with the pandemic and take what is happening with technology, those are the biggest things that are currently happening. And looking at African transformation, the issue that we've always had in Africa is that of self-doubt, is that of the outside world looking at Africa as this hopeless country that is, it's only known for these diseases. I mean, if you look at documentaries, they will, mostly show these kids that are dirty, poverty-stricken, and all of that. It's not always where we see a lot of advancement shown. The advancement that's happening in Africa, and the talent and the resources that we've got. And I am not by any way saying that we do not have issues. We do have issues. We have weaknesses in all our sectors, especially in health. We know that we've got large populations that are in rural areas. They do not have access to health, and also our infrastructure is quite weak. We do not have services. Corruption, again, we have leaders that are really, really corrupt. But it doesn't mean that that's all there is to Africa. There's much more that is there. If something was an equalizer, I would say COVID-19 has been an equalizer, where now we have information, even in Africa, to say, you know what, the same illnesses that are affecting you can affect the people that are sitting in outside world, or the world that you've always looked, or the countries that you've always looked at as, role models for you. It's no longer Ebola is only happening in this country, it's not happening somewhere else. So at the same time, technology as well. The fourth industrial revolution has given us a chance to also start with this evolution at the same time as the world. And what Africa has done has been quite amazing in that area of technology. As you see on my slide, that biomed jacket that was introduced in Uganda. This smart jacket, it assists in diagnosis of pneumonia. We have seen in Rwanda, you mentioned it before when you started the conference this morning, that it is seen as the center of excellence in terms of technology in Africa. They are currently building that center that we think will produce a whole lot of experts that will help us to advance the African agenda, which says bring Africa that we want, make Africa better, advance Africa using the African resources. In South Africa as well, there's a lot of work that's happening from a 4IR point of view. I sit in the 4IR committee, which is looking at all sectors and saying, how do we ensure that we implement this in a way that takes into consideration our technological maturity level, but ensures that it is implemented in the right way, in an ethical way, and also learning from our counterparts across the world and using the resources that we've got in the country and across the continent. So there's a whole lot that is happening, and there's a lot of countries that are doing a lot more from a technology point of view. So basically with this, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of resources that we've got in Africa as a whole. There's a lot of willingness to do more in Africa. So we basically are ready to do more, but that element of self-doubt is the one thing that is still holding us back, and is something that we really need to confront and understand that we can do more with what we have, while the other countries outside of the African continent are supporting us in our journey to become better, to become the best that we can be, not necessarily to rely completely on them. If you look at our population as well, in 2015, the UN said that our youth accounted for 19% of the global population. So that's a lot of youth that are sitting here. These are the people that are very, very connected. You find them with more than 3 cell phones or 3 devices or more than 3 devices. These are the guys that will be tomorrow's leaders. These are the people that will run businesses tomorrow. These are the people that will drive this agenda that we're talking about. So there's a middle class that is also growing very fast in Africa. So we need to give ourselves a chance, and our leaders need to start making sure that we get to where we need to do. To get to where we need to go. So as far as leadership is concerned, I think it's very important that we change this narrative that has been there, that says that, Africa is a deprived continent, is a pitiable continent. When donors and funders come through, they should find us ready, not starting from scratch, because we can, be able to do this for ourselves. We might not be at the level that other countries are or other continents are, but we are ready. Given the chance, there's a lot that African youth can do, African countries can do. I have seen this now with the lockdowns. The very infrastructures or the very services that we couldn't get before the lockdowns, all of a sudden there's money available to provide for the poor. All of a sudden there's money to rescue the businesses. So it means that the capacity is there. It's just that it is not channeled properly. And maybe leadership as well is not as strong as it should be. And also leadership in Africa, we've got this spirit of Ubuntu. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this. And this is, Ubuntu is, it comes from our values that says, I am because you are. We are connected. We are a community. So I do something for you because if I was in your position, I would expect you to do it for me. And you don't do it because you feel sorry for me. You do it because it is the right thing to do. You feel the pain that I feel. So throughout the 54 countries that we have in Africa, we should be able to share. We should be able to feel that compassion for each other, we should be able to work together to get to this agenda that we want to get to. And if we have conscious leadership as well, leadership that is intentional and with good governance, we really can do more for Africa. Now, the theme of the conference talks about future Africa sustaining the source. Our source is Africa. Our source is ourselves. We need to build that. We need to work towards that sustainability. If we do not develop ourselves, if we do not invest in ourselves, and we do not invest in our country, nobody is going to come and do that. Yes, people will come from outside and will help us, but it has to start with us. We have to be ready. We need to be committed as opposed to be compliant, because that's usually what you find, that we want to tick the box, but then we don't do what we do with intention. So I think commitment is very important as far as leadership is concerned. And it is ethical as well. I mean, you either do something right or you don't do it at all. You don't stand there and say, do as I say, not as I do. People look at what leaders do and then they emulate that. So tone at the top becomes very important to maintain this ethical integrity and to drive responsibility, accountability, and fairness. And transparency is very important as well. If governments are doing things without involving stakeholders, without involving the youth, without involving women, without involving people in the rural communities, and only focusing on the economic capitals of the countries, it's pointless. Involve the people that needs to be involved so that they can own this, so that they realize that this is theirs, they are driving it, therefore the buy-in is even greater. So I think in closing, I just want to say that we are capable, we are ready, and leaders need to just realize that, ensure that as far as ethics are concerned, it's not ethics that's on the wall and they are ticked. We've got integrity, we've got trust, we've got that, but in their dealings, we don't see that reflected. We need to live those values and ensure that our employees or our followers can emulate that as well. So that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Brenda. We've got a few minutes before our next speaker. I just wanted to see if there are, if I stop that, I can see, oops. If there are any hands being raised. Yes, Christine.
Yeah, let me start my video and also unmute. Hello, Brenda. I thought it was a really inspiring presentation. I also work in the field of risk management, and I was wondering, because I'm in Europe, what do you think we can most learn from each other in terms of ethical leadership and also perspective on risk management?
Okay. As far as ethical leadership is concerned, there's always a lot to learn from different people. How I see things might not be the same as you see it. My values are informed by my background. My values are informed by the community in which I work. It's informed by what I do in some cases. So the same applies to you sitting in Europe. So from an ethical point of view, bringing all of that, it creates an even higher ethical standard, or it helps in elevating that standard that we have set for ourselves. And from a risk management point of view, a lot as well. And the reason why it's a lot is that, what I understand about Europe, not staying in Europe, is what I read in the books, what I see on media, so I have not lived So I do not have the experience. So only when you've lived something, you understand exactly how it works. And also from Africa, I mean, I've seen a lot of people that come here and assume, because they've read that in Africa 1 and 2 happens, therefore. There is no therefore. So therefore, so risk management is about, first, before you put an action plan in place, is about understanding the current state. So in your analysis of the current state, you should understand the environment. So I think there's a lot to learn in terms of where we come from, our processes that are different. Earlier on, I spoke about the maturity level that we have. Different African countries have got different maturity levels as far as technology is concerned, as far as processes are concerned. Even leadership, is different in different countries. South Africa on its own, with 58,000 citizens, has got different levels. So with where you're sitting as well, you see things differently. So I think there's a lot that all of us can learn from each other. Diversity is key.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got time for just another question if anybody wanted to ask anything. Just have a quick look. I just had a question. You made some comments about the rankings for the leadership, or it wasn't so much the leadership table for those that are most corrupt nations. Do you think there's any from your analysis of that? Do you think there's any correlation between the human conflict, the armed conflict, and the opportunity for corruption, or is it unrelated to the armed conflicts that we see within some countries?
I think there's a strong correlation to it. You see, where we've seen most corrupt activities happening is where there is no governance, for example, where the money is free flowing. That causes a lot of conflict. You see that as a result of that free flow and lack of governance, people start taking for themselves. People become corrupt. People think that they are law unto themselves, and that affects ethics. That even people that think that I really do not want to do this, because remember, as much as we are created with the world to be distinguishing, being able to distinguish between right and wrong, it doesn't. We also have free will. We can choose what we want to do. And in some cases, you find that the conditions that people find themselves in also pushes them to a level where, they become corrupt, and then they justify it with, I was just trying to get something to eat, or I was just trying to do that. So yes, if there is no governance, if there is no strong leadership, it will end up in conflicts. And if there is conflict, it ends up in corruption, and corruption then means money goes out of the country.
Yeah. Thank you for such a full answer. I mean, it's just, it's probably one of the items that always comes to mind when we think of governance or poor governance, not just in Africa, but across the world. And it is such a very difficult topic to address when there is the haves and the power and the oppressed and those that want to make the difference. Yeah. Because you're often thwarted at whatever level, because there's always a vested interest in the reasons why there's an appointment. We've heard several speakers over the last 24 hours, saying one of the biggest problems. So Dr. Madhu, I think maybe was saying the biggest problem that he found for the development and trade within African countries was because of lack of infrastructure for transportation of supplies and the supply chain, and a lot of that is often thwarted because of lack of governance, or so that it's a multifaceted problem, I think, and that's the reason why TAFFD as it's got a we are bringing this transdisciplinary approach, so that we all approach the problems from different angles to try and find solutions and actually gain traction. Brenda, it's been absolutely lovely. I'm hoping lovely hearing from you. I hope you can stay on the conference for a little bit longer. We do have a change of our next speaker, but before we move on to that, I just like to give a round of applause for Brenda.
Thank you so much.
But they can do that through their videos and what have you. But so thank you very much, Brenda. I hope you can stick around. And obviously you've shared those details for people to ask questions after this session.
Thank you so much, Edward.
You're welcome. So as I was just saying, our next speaker should have been Tom Ross. He's unable to make the conference today and provide his presentation. We do have, and we are very fortunate to have Dan Elton with us, who joined us earlier, and he is very kindly stepped in to provide us a presentation. I can just try and find all your